Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Help Is Here podcast, brought to you by the Compulsion Academy. So for a long time, obviously, I was in a porn addiction, didn't really know how bad this addiction was, but what I did know is I wanted to get out of it, and I was trying really hard to get out of this addiction that I was stuck in. And basically, I would be doing all these different things, like everything that people would tell me to do. You know, I was staying busy, meditating, reading all these different books on different therapies, even went to therapy myself as well, and would try my hardest to overcome addiction. But then eventually what would always happen is that I have this desire and I'd have all these thoughts going around, and it'd kind of feel like this desire was going to last forever, and I didn't know how to deal with any of that. And so eventually, even after like weeks or months, I would always engage. I'd always like watch porn, and so I felt pretty terrible afterwards. And then I managed to develop a little bit of consistency in 2023. I'd started to meditate a lot. I was meditating for probably an hour, like most days, and I actually only like relapsed about between 10 and 20 times that year. I remember I used to like keep a streak, and I had like this notebook, and I'd write like an X on the certain days that I'd relapsed in that notebook. And I remember looking back at the end of the year and sort of feeling like, this isn't perfect, but at least it's progress. And then in 2024, last year, I learned something called the Beyond Compulsion method, and I managed to actually rewire my brain correctly. So I learned a very specific script, like one piece of A4 paper, 5 facts on this script, very personalized to me as well. And I'd read through this script, and every time I had a compulsive desire, I'd actually have an opportunity to change those old neural pathways and rewire my brain correctly. So I did that last year, and it worked for a while. I was working for a few months. There was one day when I relapsed, and then I did well again for a little while, and then there was another day that I relapsed. So I chose to engage 2 times. The second time I chose to engage was really weird, because like I literally masturbated for like 5 seconds and then I was finished, and then that was that, and then I went and used my script. And that was like very early on in 2024 after learning this method. I'd actually stopped using the method basically, which is what led to me choosing to engage and relapsing those 2 times. And then I managed to get on the straight line, and I managed to actually overcome this problem for good and rewire the brain by having a very consistent approach and realizing the hard way that if I do not stick to the process, if I don't use this method, then I am going to eventually relapse. Like, that's just inevitably going to happen. And I realized as well that like permanent mental freedom from this problem is absolutely possible. So in the whole of 2024, as I say, in the very first like few months, I engaged 2 times, and then I managed to turn it around, rewire the brain. And now I would say after, I think 9 or 10 months or however long it's been, I feel like I'm going to stay on this straight line towards permanent mental freedom, hopefully for the rest of my life. You know, as long as I stick to the method and I do what I know I need to do, then I don't really feel like there's any chance of me going back to porn, and I don't really have those desires anymore anyway. So now it's more of a case of me working on other areas of my life. And through that journey, I've managed to gain so much stability, groundedness, consistency, and feeling quite proud of myself and just experiencing some peace of mind. So I've got the ability to focus more on helping other people and having the positive impact on the world that I want to have. So what I'm going to do in this video is just go into a bit more detail on the 3 kinds of people there are when it comes to porn addiction. So let's start off with the circle person. So this is who I was. I was a circle person for probably about 8 years, maybe 8 or 9 years. I never actually changed those neural pathways at all, because I was always avoiding, distracting, and substituting out that possibility of watching porn. Like, I was staying busy, I was getting into all these different things and working out and trying to make like new friends or set up new like social clubs in my community, or I don't know, I started like some volunteering work, and so I started a book club. I don't know, I'd done all these different things, and it hadn't really helped me like actually deal with the desire. Because basically how addiction works is you have this compulsive desire, like you have that eventual inevitable moment where you have this desire and you're like, what do I do now? That's going to come. And so however busy you stay, or however much you try and avoid those urges, however much you try and remove the triggers and have the blockers installed, any of that stuff, eventually you have that moment where you have an urge and it's like, okay, well, what do I do now? And I was really going in circles because I kept on relapsing, but every time I relapsed, I'd like sort of feel like I'd learned something new. So I'll give you an example. It might be, okay, I go on Instagram, I end up seeing some sexual content, relapse on Instagram, and then I'm like, okay, let's get all motivated again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete Instagram, and this time I'm going to quit for good. I'm never going to look at porn ever again because I've deleted Instagram. And then some time would go by. Eventually, I end up going on a different platform, and I look at sexual content that way. And I was just like going around in circles. Then it's like, oh, I relapsed because I didn't meditate enough today. I relapsed because I didn't go to the gym today. I relapsed because I had a bad sleep last night, and I always relapse when I'm tired. Oh, I relapsed because I was stressed at work. So there's always like these different reasons that the addicted part of the mind will come up with, and they were actually just the justifications to continue staying stuck in that addiction. So I was just going round and round in circles. Like there's always a new reason to relapse, and I got literally nowhere. Like there's no change in those neural pathways. And I had a no-fap streak, but I'd just like go on these longer streaks and then relapse. So it was completely pointless, to be honest. The second kind of person that we have is the zigzag person. This is the person who actually does pretty well for like a good period of time, maybe a couple of months, and maybe gets on like a good streak as such. Maybe, you know, does the 90 days or whatever. And they feel like they're making progress. They do experience some real freedom from the problem temporarily. They're feeling okay. But then eventually they do relapse, they go back to the addiction. And then from there, they're kind of just managing and controlling the addiction. They're sort of going on a streak for a few days or maybe a few weeks, and then they relapse again. And then maybe they go on a longer streak and they go back and they relapse again. So it's a bit similar to the circle person, maybe a little bit more successful. They're not doing it quite as often, but really they're just controlling and managing an addiction. They're not actually changing those neural pathways correctly, because to get on the like straight line, to like actually have the permanent mental freedom to fully rewire the brain, what you need to do is basically deal with every urge correctly. Because if you don't deal with the urges and you choose to go back and you choose to watch porn, even one time, what actually happens is that strengthens those old addictive neural pathways, and you're right back in that addiction. That's why when I went 3 months without porn a few times in the past, and I engaged just one time, I'd be back in that addiction for like 6 months, and it'd be so hard to ever sort of get that freedom that I felt like I temporarily experienced. And really, when you're that zigzag person, you're just frustrated by those ups and downs. You want the permanent mental freedom. You don't want it to be a battle anymore. You don't have all these desires all the time, trying to control it and manage it. And you just want that groundedness. You want that consistency. And that is where the straight line comes in. I call this the life beyond compulsion. This is what I want for myself. This is what I'm continuing to work on. I'm continuing to rewire my brain, and I'm loving the process of doing so. It's really enjoyable, because what I'm doing is I'm now applying the tools and the education that I've learned from Mary Paulus, my mentor, about beyond compulsion. She's worked in addiction recovery for over 30 years. I'm applying all of that and my experience working with clients and what I've learned and where I've seen people maybe go wrong and where people have gone right. I'm applying everything, and I'm using it for every area of my life. And that's really the way to do things anyway, because if you're substituting out one compulsive behaviour for another, you're never actually going to get that real freedom. You're still going to be in a constant conflict between wanting to do something and wanting to stop doing it. So what I mean by this is, yeah, I've done like 9 or 10 months or whatever it is without porn. Now for me, it's okay. Well, how do I apply the same principles to overcoming, you know, maybe using my phone more than I'd like. Maybe it's like checking my emails or checking my messages, things like that. Any other behaviour at all, and you can apply the exact same principles to every area of your life, and honestly live a life where you have 100% discipline, like literally 100%. Every single moment of your day, you are making choices that you're proud of. And people talk about discipline a lot in terms of somebody who's like always on grind, always like working hard, always sort of busy. It's not about that for me. You know, I think 100% discipline for me is, as I say, every single moment of the day you're making choices you're proud of. That's all it is. And so that, like, in terms of how that actually looks, that might be me waking up, have a coffee, do some work, write some emails for a bit, you know, write about what's on my mind, write about all this addiction recovery stuff which really fascinates me, share that with people, because hopefully that can help a few other people out there who have been where I've been in the past. And then I might, you know, chill out for a bit. I might like read a book for an hour, or I might go to the gym, and yeah, maybe I do work out. Maybe I cook a meal. Maybe I spend some time with friends or my girlfriend or family. You know, on Tuesday, for example, I went to Sheffield, like my hometown, from Manchester on the train, and I just went out for like a coffee with my mum. Then we had lunch together, had some steak, I bought it, just sort of getting to treat my mum, and that's just like on a Tuesday. Most people are probably working, but I'm just there, enjoying my life really, and I never really have this feeling that I always need to be working. And that's something actually that I guess I'm sort of working on even further. But yeah, it's just about kind of living your life and not feeling like compelled or driven or obsessed, like you've always got to be doing something, So yeah, this is the straight line. And at that point, you've got this consistency, you've got this groundedness. Every urge you deal with correctly. So every urge is an opportunity, in my eyes, to rewire the brain. So you would just go to your 5-fact scripts, like 1 A4 piece of paper. I'd read through that personally, rewire the brain, and then just get back to my life really. And then also on this straight line, you can actually be grateful like throughout your life. So as I say, like on Tuesday, just feeling grateful, like feeling really grateful that I get to see my mum. And then there was a night this week where I was on FaceTime with my girlfriend, and neither of us really wanted to hang up particularly, but it was getting late and she wanted to read a book. So she says to me, Tom, get your book. So I'm like, all right, where are we going with this? So I get my book, sit back down, and she says, yeah, let's just read our books together. So she's laying in bed reading a book, she's got the lamp on, I put my lamp on, and we're just reading on FaceTime together for an hour. And at the end of it, I was like, damn, like it's crazy how much more wholesome my life is. Like I can just sit down and read a book for an hour. Like it didn't really matter whether my girlfriend was there or not, but that was nice, it was good to do that. And so life's just entirely different when you don't have that drive, that compulsive desire, that constant wanting. You're always wanting to do something, and for a lot of people, and me in the past, especially when I was a zigzag person or a circle person, which I definitely have been, I always felt like I needed to be busy, or like needed to be doing something. If it wasn't porn, if I was trying to avoid that porn, then well, I've got to be doing something. Otherwise, I'm not going to have that trust in myself. And that's why I think it's so important to have a very specific tool, a method to deal with that compulsive desire. Because if you don't have it, it's like, well, what do you do in that situation, right? You're going to end up being a circle person or end up a zigzag person. That's not what we want. So they're the 3 kinds of people that I believe there is when it comes to addiction. You want to get on that straight line. And the thing is with this straight line as well, just a final point, and I really want to make this clear, but it's engaging in the behaviour which creates the desire to engage again. And that's why it's possible to be on this straight line where every single day you're just rewiring the brain and things get easier because you're basically rewiring the brain, right? It's like that's how it get easier. If you engage even one time, that's how you end up getting stuck again and back in that addiction, because it's engaging which creates a desire. That's what keeps you stuck with those old neural pathways. Hopefully that makes sense. I hope you can see now that the only real way out of an addiction is to stop the behaviour for good. Now, this isn't some continual journey where you always have to be learning and learning and learning. It's not like that at all. Once you've got a method that works, you just want to stick to that and stay on that straight line, and then go live your life and maybe focus on other things a lot more. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Hopefully it's been useful, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Bye bye.